Welcome to the latest episode of the Shot Report, your weekly show through the 2025 season, diving into Maryland football. I'm Ahmed Gafir, back again with Ben Strober, and this time we have Ricky Welch stepping in. And unfortunately, guys, for the second straight week, we are set to recap another loss as Maryland will now look to bounce back this upcoming Saturday in their final game before their second and final bye week of the season. Before we dive too far ahead, we'll look at this past weekend, 34-31 loss to Nebraska. Furious comeback, 17 consecutive points, 14 points in the third quarter there to take that one touchdown lead. Nebraska closing out the game with 10-0 to take that 34-31 game, handing Maryland its second consecutive loss at home. Tough, heartbreaking loss for the second straight week for a team that now finds itself 7 points away from being 6-0. Definitely a tough 2 weeks. But Ben, what's your biggest takeaway from this latest loss?
Biggest takeaway, if you're a college football fan and not necessarily just a Maryland fan, what a game of football you got to watch. That was absolutely excellent stuff. Super competitive Big Ten football game. But if you're a Maryland fan, you're just feeling heartbreak once again. And before I even get to the stuff that happened on the field, I'm kind of feeling for the Maryland fans as well, because if you think about it like this, 2 home games left on the docket. You got Indiana for homecoming, who's one of the best teams in the country, basically just went into Oregon and stomped them. So that's going to be a big-time matchup at home, but one that you probably don't feel too confident about right now if you're Maryland, and also Michigan as well. You had 2 opportunities at home in front of really great crowds where there was some juice and some buzz around this program, and ultimately you squandered the lead late and you were unable to capitalize on that momentum that you had on your home field. And for the second straight week, my biggest concern and takeaway from the game is that Maryland truly just once again lacked the killer instinct. You really felt like you had all the momentum you needed to win that game after the Dante Joyner pick 6. Yeah. You think about it this way, Maryland won the turnover battle 3-0 in that game and ultimately did not win it, which it just seems unbelievable, because if anytime you turn the ball over 3 times and you don't even force any back for the other team, that is not a recipe for winning football. But ultimately, Maryland stalled out offensively. The one drive I think about to start the fourth quarter where they get in Nebraska territory and they end up having to punt after a 4-yard loss on a running play, then a delay of game that kind of stalled things offensively. And it's really just been back-to-back weeks where the offense has gone stagnant from the middle of the third quarter on to the rest of the game. And Malik Washington, he's been such a great talent for this team, but there were times in that game on Saturday where you could see the youth come into play with him, especially on the last drive, the grounding call, which was a big one, and just missing on some key throws late in the game. So lacking the killer instinct once again ultimately killed what could have been a really big moment for this Maryland team to pick up a big win at home. And now with the schedule looming the way it is, you go out west, it's not going to be an easy task to go get a win out in Los Angeles. So this team's going to have to find a way to bounce back and finish a game. That's all it is. It's all about finishing. They've played 3 quarters in the last 2 games, but not the fourth.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And you talked about Malik Washington, that last drive there. I thought one thing he did really well. He had some really nice throws on third down to keep Maryland's drives alive. But again, like you said, that last drive, that's I believe it was second down. He had Dorian Fleming wide open on the left side of the field, and it would have been a tough throw, and an ill-advised throw, but it wasn't even looked that way, and that was tough to see. And like you said, the intentional grounding, but I think that was probably the first time, probably for me, that I've seen Malik Washington kind of look a little bit more human. And we were talking to him this week and asking him if that was his first losing streak, because he hasn't had that at Spalding either. So it's his first time he's lost consecutive games since youth ball. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounced back. But Ricky, what kind of stuck out with you on Saturday?
Yeah, just like Ben said, I mean, it's kind of a situation where you're looking at it and it's like you could be 6-0, but you probably shouldn't be 6-0, but it's more of a could be. And I'm going to kind of bring it to the other side of the ball. The defense, the tackling just wasn't there. I think it was 24 total missed tackles. Emmett Johnson, a good running back for Nebraska, kind of had his way mostly all day. Thinking early, I know Locks had a sideline presser in the first quarter, second quarter, where he told the sideline reporter he's got to get more tackles down. It continued throughout the game. And late when the Maryland was blowing their lead, you think of that 2nd and 14 late in the fourth quarter. I think we were up 10 still at the time, deep in Nebraska territory, and it was a little screen play, and Wingate and Husky missed tackles. Those are your two best defensive players, and it gets them to 3rd and short, and they're off and running from there. And then the final drive where Nebraska scored, it was the first play. It was like a broken tight end screen, and Fontes had a chance to make the tackle. He doesn't, and then they get it over to the tight end on a broken play from Raiola, and then missing more tackles and then down the field. It was something you've seen from Loxley a lot. I don't know if it's just the Nebraska size. We still can't compare with the athletes in the size. And then I also want to bring it to the penalties. Another thing we've seen over and over again from the Loxley regime, that second quarter stretch was just brutal and unsportsmanlike on Nasir Taylor on a kickoff return. We back up a little bit, we end up having to punt, and then Gav Edwards hits the punt returner. They move the ball up, and then another unsportsmanlike when I think it was Ian Thomas tried to rip the ball away from somebody. They moved the ball up. We ended up getting the interception. Like you said, the turnover battle was won. But again, Cam Rice hitting Raiola late, even though he's already limping, moves that drive even more back. So I think it's just that whole momentum was killed in the second quarter there, and we were down at the half. It could have been even closer, and just those plays add up. Those missed tackles, those explosive plays that we weren't able to get. We didn't even try for them, but those explosive plays that Nebraska got were mostly on missed tackles. So I think those things really added up, ended up being the difference. Lose by 3, you never know what could happen if those went the other way.
Yeah, you mentioned it, and Locke was asked about it, and it hasn't been a consistent problem this season per se, but it hasn't been a recurring issue under Locke. Just the penalties. I believe they finished 8 penalties for 100 yards on Saturday. For me, what stuck out, and Ben, you kind of touched on it, was the pass defense, the secondary, and I thought this was kind of a chance for Maryland to really become dominant and kind of limit Nebraska. And again, this is a Nebraska wide receiver room, and they proved it on Saturday. But they have multiple guys that can break loose, break away for the big play. And I thought it'd be kind of an interesting test for the secondary that's been viewed as upgraded for much of the offseason now. But again, to win the turnover battle, to turn one of those interceptions into a pick six, 67-yarder for that opening or for the leading score in that third quarter. But again, there was an element to where when Nebraska needed to move the ball through the air, Dylan Raiola, especially on that last game-winning drive, they did so with ease. And I think the way that Nebraska was able to move the ball through the air and attack Maryland's secondary, Jamari Glasker has had a couple up and down past 2 games for him in that back line, and I think for this secondary, I think it'll be interesting to see how much they're tested this week. I don't know that's kind of the recipe for success in limiting UCLA's offense, but I expected a little bit more on Saturday. But like we said, this is a chance for Maryland to bounce back. Looking at this upcoming weekend, Saturday, they travel out west for their second road game of the year, a 7 p.m. kickoff on FS1. Now facing a red-hot UCLA team, a game that, a month ago, we definitely had a much different perspective on. Now UCLA coming off consecutive wins, first against Penn State, 42-37, followed it up with a 38-13 win against Michigan State, averaging 253 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. Obviously, this resurgence is under interim head coach Tim Skipper after Deshaun Foster was fired 15, 16 games into his head coaching tenure. So definitely a bounce back for this Bruin team. Ben, I'm interested to see what your biggest storyline, biggest matchup that you're looking to watch for this Saturday.
UCLA is like the most interesting story in college football right now, maybe, because that team looked absolutely dead in the water. Like they might not win a game. They got blown out by 20 points it was a New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, someone like that early in the season. And they're having a really hard time scoring the ball. They're giving up a ton of points. Then suddenly Tim Skipper comes into the picture. Once he gets in the fold, they can't be stopped offensively all of a sudden. And I cannot explain why. I know they've got the quarterback more involved in the rushing game, and the running attack has been much better. And Maryland did not fare well against Nebraska in the rushing attack, as Ricky touched on the 24 missed tackles. Emmett Johnson's a insane running back, first of all. I want to give him a lot of credit because he was unbelievable in that game for Nebraska, and I think he's going to be a great player, even beyond college football into the NFL one day. But Maryland really poor tackling. Are they going to be able to actually shut down UCLA? Because the way the past 2 weeks have been for that Bruin offense, 42 points against Penn State, ultimately sending James Franklin and the rest of the program into a spiral that became one of the biggest stories that transpired this past weekend, and then putting up another 38 points on Michigan State. Is Maryland going to be the team that can stop them? You'd like to think so because the defense had been the strong point for Maryland this year, but last week was simply a step back, to put it lightly. So that's the biggest thing I'm going to look for. Can Maryland finally stop this run that UCLA is on offensively?
I'll go to the other side of the run game. The Maryland run game actually looked somewhat decent. It's been a struggle all year, and they finally showed some pop, some momentum in the game. Nolan Ray broke off that big run, had 5.6 yards per carry. The whole team had 4.3 yards per carry. Dwan Williams even showed some things with the touchdown, the last touchdown of the game for Maryland. Excuse me, the first one in the second half. And UCLA on the flip side, I mean, they won these last two games against Penn State and Michigan State, but they're allowing 4.3 yards a carry. So they are susceptible to the run. And I think, reliance more on the run game could be huge. I mean, a lot of the whole fan base and has really kind of been complaining about all the screen calls that's been happening, lack of pop in downfield plays as well. So I think the run game opens up more shot plays to really, like you said, like Ben said earlier, put the game away if they are up late. I think back to that one drive after they took the lead and got the stop. They're up 7 in the third and fourth quarter, took out so much clock, ran it 8 times, no passes, got first down after first down, and then it stalled out. But you still pinned them to the 8-yard line after that play and took up so much clock. If they just did that once against Washington, I think we're looking at a 5-1 football team. So, yeah, I think if UCLA is susceptible to run, let's get more momentum on the run game. Feed Nolan Ray more. He showed some explosiveness, and that's kind of what I'm looking for to build momentum off of last week.
Yeah, I think those are fair points, and I'm kind of aligned a little bit more with Ben, but I think, different degree. I thought, Mike Locksley and the players, Daniel Wingate touched on it too. Can the tackling improve? But that kind of goes in consistent with the depth. Maryland's kind of touched on, addressing some of these depth concerns. Locksley's been transparent about those issues even before this season. And getting to this point where you're talking about emphasizing the fourth quarter, the need to finish. Maryland's been transparent that maybe some of these younger guys, a guy like CJ Smith, who's played a ton, getting him in that inside linebacker rotation a little bit more early and often, so that a guy like Daniel Wingate is fresh by that fourth quarter. A guy like Mike Harris, who played a lot more special teams than he is playing linebacker this season. But getting him some run and letting him use that athleticism and take some of these reps off. But again, can the efficiency improve from this front seven? I think the MO to stop this Bruin team is going to be limiting the big plays on offense, like you guys talked about. This Bruin rushing attack is going to be a test. And this won't be the first time. Emmett Johnson. I personally thought that Emmett Johnson looked a lot better than Jonah Coleman the week before. I think Jonah Coleman, obviously he came into that matchup top 10, top 15 in multiple categories, but Emmett Johnson did. He looked like a tank out there. But again, I think this is kind of a test for Maryland to kind of limit the big plays on the ground. And most importantly, a chance to really get some positive mojo back because, there was a lot of good momentum going into that first bye week. 4-0. I think going into the second bye week with 3 consecutive losses, having 2 weeks to kind of think about it, will be tough. But it'll be interesting to see before we dive into our score predictions and catalyst of the game. That is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs, brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry aged Black Angus all beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings, including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Make sure you find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Make sure to tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. And with that, we will dive into score prediction and our catalyst for the game. Ben, kick us off.
All right, just a clarifying note today, just because Mike Locksley was on the Sports Junkies, and I know there was a lot of hubbub that was made about the team having a players only meeting.
Yep.
Malik Washington brought it up. He said that they have player meetings every single week and it's part of a leadership council thing. So maybe not as much to worry about there than maybe some people had thought initially when Washington had said that. But I want to go back to his post-game press conference actually for a second last week with the comment to the media saying you guys have to write what you got to write. I understand it, but you can't tell me that this doesn't feel different. And I understand the sentiment with that because you have a young team that has competed with some of these other Big Ten teams that you could argue might be top 25 teams. But you got to put the game away and win one before you can say anything is different right now. When you commit the 8 penalties for 100 yards and you let a game get away from you late at home, you cannot tell me that anything has changed from that realm. I understand they're being more competitive, but until this team proves to me that they can finish and play a full 4 quarters, I cannot pick them to win the game. I have UCLA winning 27-23. If Maryland wants to win this game, they're going to have to shut down the UCLA running game as much as it possibly can because that's been the dominant catalyst for them through the past couple weeks. And in Maryland, in turn, will need to dominate time of possession. If you have a lead in the second half, you have to find a way to put that game away. Do not allow UCLA to get plenty of opportunities offensively to get back and take the lead eventually late in the game.
Yeah, I know, Ahmed. You said before you still haven't decided where you're going with the score prediction. So let me try to get you on my side of the things here. So after a few losses like these in the years past, the season kind of became unraveled. You think back to 2023, Terps start 5-0, not playing the best of teams, played a bad Indiana team to go 5-0 at home, and then kept in with Ohio State for a half, and we're even up in the third quarter, and then it fell apart, which is still 5-1. But then after that, you lose to a bad Illinois team, then you go to Northwestern, you lose that, and all of a sudden you're 5-3, and Penn State's coming to your place, and it didn't go great from there, 5-4, and all the season just unraveled. You got to avoid that this time. I said it after the first loss to Washington, and now we're looking at another loss to Nebraska. And how I think they're going to do that is kind of something like Ben said he doesn't think they can do is close it out. I think you really got to get an early lead, as crazy as to say after the last 2 games, get an early lead and try to sit on a little bit, force UCLA to throw by getting a lead. I mean, as we said, their rushing attack has been fantastic. Nico has unlocked this dual threat ability under Jerry Neuheisel, the new OC there. So I think it's a combination of getting the lead, stopping their run, making them throw, utilizing the new run game, or not a new run game, but improved run game from last week. Maybe get one of those drives like we did last week. Maybe take a few more shots downfield, less screen plays, and conservative plays down the stretch. And I think the season can still be flipped to a positive. I think they're going to get an early lead, and they're take a few more shots and get the run game going a little bit more. And I think they're going to win 30-20. I'm not the most optimistic guy, but this week I'm feeling it. This team is beatable. Obviously, new coaches and all, but as you said, they lost to New Mexico pretty badly. They lost to Northwestern in their first Big Ten contest. So I think this team is beatable, and Maryland will come out 30-20.
Got a split pod, and I guess I'm the tiebreaker now. I think Ben, you do kind of bring up a good point. And I see both sides of the coin because I 100% agree with, and I see your perspective on why this is the same Maryland, and I get it. The same types of results, but there is an element to where I look at the team and I can kind of see that the way that they approach it, the way that they take coaching. And I think that the moment that kind of stuck with me was early in the game when Malik Washington had that scramble on 4th down, and he was about a half yard short of the sticks. Nebraska took over. And as soon as that play was over, Malik Washington maybe said a sentence to himself and then immediately was right next to Coach Locks, and I watched them. They were in lockstep, and you could see them both talking through the play. And Loxley's talked about it, and I've seen flashes of it where you kind of tell Malik something one time, and you can kind of see him process it and implement and learn from that experience the second, third rep. And again, it's one player. So I think that this is a young team, and I think the tough part for this fan base right now is that a young team requires patience, and in year 7, patience is tough. So that's kind of the crossroads, I think, right now. The problem is for me going into this week, a road game going cross country. Yeah, Maryland did it last year where they went to Oregon, and it was a tougher game than many anticipated. But historically, this has not felt like a game that Maryland does win. I do think that Maryland has the skill to match up, and I think UCLA coming off 2 consecutive wins, being at home, Maryland having to overcome that in unfamiliar setting. They're in prove it to me territory right now. I think I have UCLA pulling this out 30-24. But again, I think that I know, Ricky, I know you wanted to recruit me over, but it was a valiant effort. But again, I think that this Maryland team, they like you said, I need to see them kind of finish. I need to see them kind of put it away. I do think that we will see it at some point this season. One of these last 2 home games. I mean, it's hard to pick against or pick anyone against Indiana right now, but Michigan, it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out for senior day. But right now, going to this week 8 matchup, Maryland will need to prove it, and a chance to do so going into that second and final bye. Big game this weekend, and like we said, complete different perspective going into this one a couple days out versus a couple weeks out. So make sure you tune in. Kickoff is 7 p.m. on FS1 this Saturday. And make sure you stay locked in over on InsideTheBlackandGold.net for all your Maryland news with Big Ten football officially in full swing, basketball season inching closer, and recruiting picking up steam.